Okay, so this is the head of the car. So as you can see, it's in pretty decent condition. Just needs a clean. Obviously the oil is pretty black, so yeah, well worth the change over here. So as we noticed, the actual thermostat itself is a little bit rusty in there, so we're going to see if we can get that clean. Again, it just could have been water standing in there for some time, hasn't been used. So I'm going to just check if that valve actually does work as well correctly. I do know that the car doesn't have any issues sort of cooling and heating. There's no overheating issue as well, so I just want to make sure that that is working as expected as well. Just, you know, try and free it up a little bit more, give it a clean. But yeah, I'm going to check the spark plugs as well, but as you can see, overall in pretty good condition, just needs a good clean. And then we're going to check the heater valve as well. So flipping the head over, you can see there those holes. Look at all the calcification on there. That's just coolant sitting in there for some time. Again, same with that as well. Spark plugs are black, but not in too bad of a shape. I do have new ones, so you know, perhaps we'll change those out as well. But as you can see, if you look inside the holes on there, let me just try and put the flash on, sorry. As you can see, pretty caked in there on the inside. So yeah, again, that's just the old coolant, and you know, obviously they used water, but it wasn't like sort of deionized, or it's been standing for some time. It's just caused that sort of rust to build up in there. But what we'll do is we'll obviously put some fresh coolant in there, and again, I might just give it another change after it's had a couple of runs, just to try and flush it out. But you know, unless we send this off to be sort of properly cleaned and machined, we're not going to get that inside of bits cleaned out on here. I have nothing that I can do to sort of clean that out with. So yeah, just popped the thermostat out, and as you can see in there, a little bit, again, a little bit cruddy, a little bit dirty, so I'm going to try and see if I can clean that as best as I can as well. Get the gasket off. As you can see, there's still a little bit of gasket left onto there as well, so scrape all that off, get it nice and flush, so we can put the next one back on again, and then get the head back in the car. Okay, so I've got the heater valve off the head now, and as you can see, pretty calcified again in there. Same thing with the end that goes into the head as well. So I'm going to try and clean those out as well, and then see if we can get it looking a little bit better. Managed to clean this up a little bit better now, so that's looking good. So again, we'll clean up the thermostat and put that back in, and then yeah, once this is back on and cleaned, we can put the head back on the car. So you might notice an extra set of hands here. That's my father, who's dropped in to lend his much welcomed experience, having done this many times before, and also just an extra set of hands to help lift and move things around, and always is a help. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to clean off the surface of the block as best as possible, so when we put the head back on, it's mating perfectly smooth, no imperfections that may cause any leaks down the line. Now, using the wire brush, we'll take off the excess dirt, and then we'll use a Stanley knife blade to clean off any excess residue. It could well be shellac that was on here at one point that hadn't been cleaned off, or as we've seen on the head itself, it could just be dried coolant that's just collected and caked onto the block itself there at some point. So what we're trying to do is clean it off as best as possible. Try and be very gentle with the blade. You don't want to score or scratch the surface. You want to try and make sure that no excess flakes drop into the holes. We will flush the coolant and oil again, but you just want to try and be as careful as possible, but obviously try and get it as clean as you can. So you might recall from one of my previous videos that I had to tighten the bolts on the head quite a few times to try and get the right tension down. So what I decided to do was to change the studs and the bolts for brand new ones. This will just help ensure that everything keeps the right torque and just make sure that it doesn't come loose again over time. It'll just, you know, while we're in there, we had everything off. It just made sense to change everything out for a brand new set. To tighten the studs, we're using two of the old nuts, one at the top, one at the bottom. The lower nut is actually acting as a locking nut, so it's holding the top one in place, which allows us to then tighten the stud using the top nut into the actual block. So you don't want to over tighten this. We're obviously not using any sort of torque wrench or anything like that. We've just turned it so by hand until it stops. Don't over tighten it, or you will stand a chance of snapping the actual stud. And then obviously when you're backing off the nuts, if the stud's not spinning and loose, then you know it's in there pretty good and it's got the right amount of tension.
moments later.
Gloves on job for this one. We've applied some shellac to the bottom side of the gasket, and then we'll do the same on the back of the head itself. We'll just apply a thin layer of shellac. You don't want to be applying too much of this, because what it will do is it'll then weep into the all the holes on there as well, so you don't want to just put too much on there. So we just put a thin layer, and what that thin layer will do is it will just smooth out any imperfections that may be on the block of the head, and just provide an airtight seal against the actual gasket itself, just making sure that nothing will leak out when we actually start it up. When putting the push rods back in again, you got to make sure that the cams below are in the right place. So when you pull them out originally, you may find that they've just dropped back in, but they've not dropped back into the hole correctly. So what I recommend doing is just checking that your cams are in place before you put the head back on. Otherwise, you'll have to take the head off again, and then you'll have to go in and just make sure that all the cams have dropped in the right places below. So yeah, just worth checking it before you go ahead and do the job and have to undo it again. So when putting the rockers back on again, as you can remember, we marked the cardboard with the back and the front, so just make sure that when you're putting it back on again, you're putting it on in the right direction. When you're putting it on it as well down onto the push rods, just make sure that everything is aligned up, so that the back end of the hammers are sort of positioned on the top of the actual push rods itself, so it doesn't get stuck and you don't bend the metal. So obviously if it's not going, don't force it, look at it, check it, and just make sure that everything is aligned, and then push it. Everything back on again. So carbs are back on, the heater hose is connected and tightened down, HT leads are all back on again and secured, and then don't forget about your vacuum line to your distributor cap as well, and don't also forget about your thermostat sensor that needs to go back in and be tightened, and then don't forget to tighten down the top of the actual thermostat housing as well. So now you need a torque wrench. So there's multiple stages to this, so we tighten it up from 25 pound-feet, then to 35 pound-feet, 45 pound-feet, and then up to 50 to 55 pound-feet of torque. But I mean, I'd stop at 50 because obviously I've got brand new studs that I'm putting back in again. But obviously if you're reusing the old one, you might want to go a little bit tighter on that, just to ensure that it's all secure. There is a sequence to tighten this down. Obviously I've done it in a previous video, but I'll put it on here so everything's in one video for us. And you can see the order in which it needs to go in, be tightened. Just decided to switch out one of these screws here, sorry, nuts here rather, just because it wasn't getting enough tension in it. So I think it's just had its day, so I've just replaced that with another one there. I'm not yet suspicious about this one, but when I test for the valve clearance and so on, then I might just change that one out. The rest of them seem to be okay, just that one just wasn't seem to keep any tension on it. So yeah, everything else now is tightened down. So valve cover back on with the gasket, and then that's pretty much it, done. Coolant needs to go back in, so you top up some coolant, and then obviously I will get around to doing the oil change and the filter change as well, but I'll probably put that in a different video for you guys.